This is the second of two posts from Adullamscavemusic today. The first was an explanation of the relevance of the picture behind me to what Adullamscavemusic is about in relation to the power of the Psalms and hymnology to embed great theology and Christian truth in our hearts and minds, and how these hymns and psalms can be connected with periods of celebration and Christian festivals through the year that may not necessarily be warranted or commanded in Scripture to be observed, like the Moedim were, but which can have tremendous influence within the Christian community in educating us into these wonderful truths, both ourselves and the coming generations. And so that's why I believe that a period like Advent should be a time that is, yes, indeed, a period of weeks in which hymns like these are brought out and sung, celebrated, and also become a prophetic witness to the world around them. If we were singing hymns like these and celebrating them, you can be sure, I certainly believe, that the world around about would definitely take notice, especially in a time like this, for instance, when we're going through periods of great difficulty and darkness, confusion and uncertainty. And today's hymn is a very brief one, but it was written during a time like that. It was written during the 30 Years' War in Germany, when hymn writers like Paul Gerhardt and today's hymn writer Johann Rist were living, times of what the dictionary calls pestilence and pillaging and famine. And if we think that we're going through difficult times in this last year, imagine what it was like living in 30 years of warfare. What caused people like Gerhard and Johann Rist to write hymns like this, hymns of tremendous faith. He writes here about this child, this little helpless boy, would be our confidence and joy. And for these great Lutheran hymn writers, the period of Advent leading up to Christmas was part of their cycle in the year. Whatever else was happening in the world around them, they still observed these cycles, these periods, in which, again, many of the people were not well educated, and so they learnt their theology through the hymns. They learnt biblical truths through these periods of celebration. And this particular hymn picks up that truth from Genesis 3:15 that's often referred to as the first preaching of the gospel to Adam and Eve, when God said he would send a son, a child, to destroy the works of Satan. And when Jesus was born in Bethlehem, that was the fulfillment of the gospel that was handed down by Adam and Eve to Abel when he was killed, unto Seth, unto his generation, unto Noah, eventually to Abraham, and throughout the Old Testament, until, as we go through the writings of the Old Testament, both the Psalms that speak of the Messiah so clearly, the great Davidic king who would come, and more clearly in the prophets, the coming of this child was everything that God's believing people would be looking forward to. And here in Bethlehem was when he actually, in the city of David, here in Bethlehem, is when he was born. And his coming is the thing that gives us hope that indeed the works of Satan will be destroyed throughout the earth one day, because he has already been crushed by this child. And of course, the Son of God had to become a man to do it, because it was by a man that we were brought into Satan's captivity, and it was by a man that Satan would be crushed. This is the kind of truth that is supposed to be being celebrated during this Christmas period, and not, as certainly in my view, dumbed down by the commercialism or relegated to just a carol service or a performance of the Messiah, something that should be preoccupying our thinking week by week and even day by day during this Advent period and proclaimed in our praises as well as our preaching to the world around us. Johann Rist was a hymn writer, a pastor, and also someone who studied medicine, which is of interest to me. Break out, O radiant heavenly light, and usher in the morning. O shepherds, shrink not back in fright, but hear the angel's warning. This child, this little helpless boy, shall be our confidence and joy. The powers of hell o'erthrowing, at last our peace